We all live in tribes. We have friends, we have colleagues, people, we surround ourselves with people who share a lot of the same opinions and ideas as us. It makes for a comfortable life, but as a result, we often tend to stereotype people who don't agree with us. Oh, they're just ignorant. They're stupid. They're bad. They're evil. You can hear this every day when you turn on the TV or you go to your favorite media site. We all do this. And that's part of why we're in the situation we're in today.
Katharine and I met at University of Illinois in a group called Graduate InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. It was basically a group of graduate students that were looking to connect. We had our faith in common and we were looking to make friendships. So I walk in the door and she was the large group coordinator for this group. That meant that she picked the speakers and helped with some of the events. She was also the greeter. So she greeted me and then I married her, but there were a few years in between there.
What I love about Andrew is he's never boring. He is not what you would expect when you meet either a linguistics professor or a pastor. He's also a committed Christian. He also believes very strongly in the role and the importance of God in our lives. And he is a very funny person. There's never a dull moment. We have so much fun together. He's just a great person to be with.
I didn't grow up believing that many environmental concerns were real or that they were truthful or accurate. Save the whales, bathe in a stream, wear hemp, all that stuff seems sort of, it's just some sort of liberal agenda. And, me as a conservative Christian, how could I even consider all that stuff?
Changing anybody's mind is definitely a process. So even today, there's still things that we talk about, but what about this solution or that solution, or how could we actually tackle this problem without compromising people's values? But the watershed moment probably was when the tide turned, was when we went together to NASA's website and he downloaded the temperature data from NASA and he put it into Excel on his own computer and he plotted it. And as he would say at that moment, he had a decision to make. Either NASA, who put men on the moon, was involved in this worldwide conspiracy to fake this issue, or it really was true. And so, being a smart person, he applied Occam's razor. The simplest answer usually is right. And that was, I think, the turning point of our discussion.
I think over time, I guess it was over the years that followed, I began to realize, okay, she's doing climate modeling and she's looking at the Earth's atmosphere and temperature, and then the issues surrounding climate change started to heat up in the media there. And, it became obvious that Katharine was going to play an integral role in communicating about climate change. Ultimately, I think I had to come to the conclusion that a thermometer is not Republican, a thermometer is not Democrat. This issue is not blue or red. This issue is really green. This issue is one that's independent of politics.
So climate change is not a black, white, yes, no issue. The best way to think about climate change is the way the Department of Defense thinks about it. Climate change is a threat multiplier. It takes the threats we already face today, the threats we have already faced in the last 100 years, and it multiplies them and makes them stronger and harder to deal with.
So I grew up kind of as a self-confessed, self-proclaimed legalist. I was doing everything I could to get God to like me and keep him liking me. And when I wrote The Naked Gospel, it was really about my journey into God's grace and how God's grace is really what changes our attitudes and our actions. And I think what Katharine brings to the table is that she puts in front of me a real way, a tangible way that we can care not just for our neighbor next door, but our neighbor around the globe. A lot of times we humans tend to think about the person in front of us, but what Katharine is saying is there's someone we can't see in a real place with a real problem, and that is climate change, and that there's some things we as Christians can do about it.
In Texas, we've seen some killer wildfire seasons. We've always seen wildfire in Texas. It's just part of life. But as our climate warms, as our soils dry out, as our natural pattern of feast or famine, wet or dry, gets stretched out, we're going to see increasing risk of wildfire also. We haven't seen any change in the frequency of hurricanes. We're not seeing any more hurricanes today than we did 25 or 50 or possibly even 100 years ago. But what we are seeing are stronger hurricanes. Hurricanes get their energy from warm ocean water. And a lot of the extra heat that's being trapped by this blanket of ours is being put into the ocean. So we are seeing hurricanes that start off as mild little tropical storms pass over these record warm pools of sea surface temperature and ratchet all the way up to Category 5s overnight. We aren't seeing more hurricanes, but we are seeing stronger hurricanes as a result of a warming world.
What's so unique about Katharine is that she's a Christian climate scientist, and that's really hard to find. I mean, when we Christians go for our news or our scientific information, we typically turn on the local TV or radio station and we listen to this talk show host who's eloquent and articulate and charismatic. But does he or she have their facts right? And who have they been prepared by? A lot of times people have an agenda. What I love about Katharine is that she's not Republican and she's not Democrat. She's Canadian, so she's out of the box. She doesn't seem to fit with anybody's label or category. So, I look to Katharine and I say, she's not trying to be an economist. She's not trying to be a politician. She simply has one message, that climate change is real, and that as a Christian, we should really care about that.
Here's the thing with climate change. It can't just be a thing that certain tribes agree with and certain things don't. The biggest thing that I've learned from Andrew is it doesn't matter what tribe you're in. We all have the values we need to care about climate change. Not just to care about it, but to act on it.
So the reason we wrote this book together, A Climate for Change, is because, first of all, it's really hard to find any book where a pastor and a scientist have partnered together. And then you've got this hot button issue, climate change, that's all over the news and it's really important and people are fighting and debating about it. So to have a Christian perspective hit the Christian community in a way that, people can really identify with, I think, my message is never one of green guilt. If guilt is the last thing that I'm about, I'm about a Christianity that comes from the heart through a genuine care and love for other people. We shouldn't be motivated by guilt. So what if there were a book? What if there were a book for Christians about this issue of climate change that wasn't pushing the idea of green guilt, wasn't making people feel bad for driving a car to work? Instead, it was really about, here's the information we need to see that this is real and that real people in real places are being impacted. And that if we say as Christians that we care for other people, then why not care for people that are being affected by climate change, and why not see what we can do about it?